The sound of Renee's BMW pulling into our driveway at 2:47 a.m. wasn't what woke me. It was the silence that followed. The careful click of her heels on our hardwood floors, the whispered phone call in the kitchen, the shower running for 23 minutes straight. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Evan Grady, and I've been making custom furniture for 15 years. My hands know the difference between oak and maple in the dark. My ears can detect a loose joint from across the room. So when my wife of 8 years started moving through our house like a stranger, I noticed. "How was the yoga retreat, honey?" I asked the next morning, watching her fumble with the coffee maker she'd used every day for 3 years. "Transformative," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Really opened my chakras." Right. Because nothing says spiritual enlightenment like a Louis Vuitton suitcase that looked suspiciously empty for a week-long trip. I waited until she left for her job at Coastal Marketing Solutions before I started looking. The credit card statements told an interesting story. No charges at any yoga retreat, but plenty at high-end restaurants in Portland, the kind of places you take someone you want to impress. My workshop in the basement has always been my sanctuary. Surrounded by hand tools my grandfather left me and the smell of wood stain, I can think clearly. That's where I was when I found Renee's phone, forgotten on the workbench where she'd set it while admiring my latest dining table. The messages from B made my stomach drop through the concrete floor. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible. Your husband has no idea what he's missing. Book us that suite in Vegas. Time to make this official." I forwarded everything to my personal email before deleting the evidence of my snooping. 13 years of marriage, and she was throwing it away for someone who used your instead of your in his dirty texts. "Evan, you down there?" Frankie's voice echoed down the stairs. My apprentice had been helping me with a large commission, a bedroom set for some tech executive in Cape Elizabeth. "Yeah, come on down," I called back, slipping Renee's phone into my pocket. Frankie Martinez was 26, built like a linebacker, and had the kind of loyalty you only find in ex-military guys who've seen real betrayal. He took one look at my face and set down his tool bag. "What happened? You look like someone stole your favorite chisel." "Worse," I said. "Someone stole my wife." I showed him the screenshots I'd saved. Frankie whistled low. "Man, that's rough. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to think about it," I said, "and then I'm going to make sure she regrets underestimating me." That evening, Renee came home with takeout from Giuseppe's, our anniversary restaurant. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I thought we could have a nice dinner," she said, unpacking containers of chicken parmesan. "I feel like we haven't been connecting lately." "Connecting," I repeated. Interesting choice of words. She paused, a forkful of pasta halfway to her mouth. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, honey. Just that connection requires two people to be present, mentally and physically." The next morning, I drove to the Blue Boy, the local bar where half the town gathered for coffee before work. Barb Henley had been tending bar there for 20 years, and she knew everyone's business before they did. "Evan Grady," she said, pouring me coffee without asking. "You look like hell." "Thanks for the pep talk, Barb." "Your wife's been making quite an impression around town," she continued, wiping down glasses. "Saw her at Murphy's Steakhouse last Tuesday with some hot shot in a Porsche. Real cozy-like." My grip tightened on the coffee mug. Tuesday was her book club night. "Must have been discussing some pretty intimate literature," Barb said with a knowing look. "Guy looked like the type who thinks money can buy anything, including other people's wives." I spent the rest of the day in my workshop, channeling my rage into a jewelry box I was making for our neighbor's daughter. The intricate inlay work required absolute precision. One wrong move and hours of work would be ruined, kind of like a marriage. When Renee got home, she was practically glowing. "Great day at work," she announced. "We landed that new account I've been chasing. Which account was that? She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. The Portland tech startup. Cole Industries. Cole, as in Brandon Cole, the B from her text messages. Congratulations, I said. I'm sure you worked very hard to land that one. That night, I lay awake listening to her breathing, wondering how long this had been going on. How many lies had I swallowed? How many times had she come home to me after being with him? The next morning brought the final straw. Hidden in her gym bag, I found a receipt from the Bellagio in Vegas. A suite booked for 2 under her name for the following week. The same week, she'd told me she was visiting her sister in Boston. I sat in my workshop staring at that receipt, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Renee thought she was dealing with the same pushover she'd married, the guy who let her make all the social plans, who never questioned her girls' nights out, who worked quietly in his basement while she lived her glamorous life upstairs. She was about to learn that still waters run very deep. I picked up my phone and started making calls. If Renee wanted to play games, I was about to show her how a master craftsman approaches a project, with patience, precision, and the right tools for the job. The beauty of being underestimated is that nobody sees you coming. For 8 years, I'd been the quiet husband who fixed things around the house and didn't ask too many questions. Renee's friends barely acknowledged me at parties, treating me like part of the furniture, ironic, considering I actually made furniture for a living. "Evan's so lucky to have you," her best friend Kayla would say, as if I weren't standing right there. "Most men couldn't handle a woman with your ambition." What they didn't understand was that I'd been watching, learning, building a complete picture of their little social circle while they dismissed me as background noise. Kayla Morrison was an Instagram influencer with 40,000 followers and the moral flexibility of a weather vane. She documented every meal, every outfit, every thought that crossed her perfectly highlighted head. More importantly, she couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. Jules Patterson worked in HR at the same company as Renee. She was the type who knew everyone's salary, everyone's vacation schedule, and everyone's personal business. She treated gossip like currency and spent it freely. Then there was Brandon Cole himself. I'd done my research after finding his name on that hotel receipt. 38 years old, divorced twice, owner of a tech company that specialized in disruptive solutions, whatever that meant. His LinkedIn profile was full of humble bragging about his journey and motivational quotes about taking what you deserve. Looking at his perfectly staged photos, I could see exactly what attracted Renee. He represented everything she thought she wanted: money, status, excitement, the kind of man who drove a Porsche and wore expensive watches and made her feel like she was living in a movie. What she didn't realize was that she was about to become the star of a very different kind of story. I started with surveillance, not the creepy, illegal kind, just the natural observation skills you develop when you work with your hands. You learn to notice details, to spot problems before they become disasters. Renee's patterns were easy to track once I started paying attention. Her late nights at the office always fell on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Her girls' nights out happened whenever Brandon posted on social media about being in town. Her sudden interest in fitness coincided perfectly with his gym membership. The day she announced her Vegas trip, I was ready. "My sister really needs me right now," she said over breakfast, not quite meeting my eyes. "She's going through a rough patch with David." "That's terrible," I said, buttering my toast. "What kind of rough patch?" "Oh, you know, marriage stuff, communication problems." The irony was so thick you could cut it with a chisel. "Well, you should definitely go help her," I said. "Take all the time you need." She looked surprised by my easy agreement. "Really? You don't mind?" "Honey, family comes first. Always." What I didn't tell her was that I'd already called her sister. Linda lived in Boston, just like Renee claimed, but she was happily married and had no idea about any visit. She was also more than willing to help expose her cheating sister once I explained the situation. The morning Renee left for her sisterly support mission, I watched her pack clothes that had never seen the inside of a casual family visit. Designer dresses, expensive lingerie, shoes that cost more than most people's monthly car payments. "Have fun with Linda," I said, kissing her cheek at the door. "Tell her I said hello." "I will," she lied smoothly. "I'll call you tonight." She didn't call, but Brandon Cole posted a photo from the Bellagio pool deck at 3:47 p.m. Pacific time. I recognized the bikini from Renee's Instagram posts. That's when I made my first move. I called Frankie, my old friend Tommy from high school, and Dave from the lumberyard. "Boys' weekend," I announced. "Vegas, baby, my treat." "Are you serious?" Tommy asked. "What's the occasion?" "Let's call it a celebration of new beginnings," I said. We flew out the next morning. While Renee and Brandon were probably enjoying room service and thinking they were so clever, I was hitting every casino, restaurant, and show on the Strip with 3 guys who knew how to have a good time and document every minute of it. The photos were epic. Me at the blackjack table with a stack of chips and a huge grin. The 4 of us at a steakhouse raising glasses in a toast. Tommy and Dave flanking me at a magic show, all of us laughing like teenagers. I posted everything to Facebook, Instagram, and the local community group chat. Made sure to tag everyone I could think of, including several of Renee's friends. The responses started immediately. "Evan, didn't know you had it in you. Living your best life. Where's Renee? Guys trip. Love it." By the time Kayla saw the posts and called Renee in a panic, the damage was done. Half the town had seen me living it up in Vegas while my wife was supposedly in Boston comforting her sister. Renee called me at 11 p.m., her voice tight with barely controlled rage. "What the hell are you doing in Vegas?" "Having a great time," I said cheerfully. "You should try it sometime." "Oh wait, you are." The silence stretched for 10 seconds. "I don't know what you think you know. I know you're not in Boston, sweetheart. I know you're probably in the same city I am, maybe even the same hotel. I know Linda hasn't seen you in 6 months and was very confused when I called to check on her emotional state." Another silence, longer this time. "Evan, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very creative. But right now, I'm about to hit the craps table with my buddies, and frankly, that sounds more entertaining than whatever story you're about to spin." I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I flew home alone. The guys decided to extend their stay, and waited. Renee's return flight wasn't until evening, which gave me plenty of time to prepare. I changed the locks on the house, all of them. Front door, back door, garage, even the basement workshop. Then I went to the bank and moved half of our joint savings into a personal account. Completely legal. My name was on everything. When Renee's BMW pulled into the driveway at 9:30 p.m., I was sitting in my workshop putting the finishing touches on a rocking chair I'd been crafting for weeks. The sound of her key failing to work in the front door lock was music to my ears. The doorbell rang 3 times before I answered it. She stood on our front porch, her own front porch, looking like a stranger asking for directions. Her designer luggage sat behind her, and her face was a mask of controlled fury. "Open the door, Evan." "I don't think so," I said through the screen. "This is my house now. You can find somewhere else to sleep tonight." "You can't lock me out of my own home." "Actually, I can. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you put your mind to it. You should try it sometime, instead of putting your mind on other people's husbands." She stepped closer to the screen, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If you think this little tantrum is going to accomplish anything, this isn't a tantrum, Renee. This is a wake-up call. For 8 years you've treated me like I was invisible, like I was just part of the scenery in your exciting life. You forgot that invisible people see everything. I never— Brandon Cole, Cole Industries, room 2847 at the Bellagio. Should I keep going?" Her face went white in the porch light. "I want a divorce," I continued. "You can have your lawyer call mine. Until then, find somewhere else to live. Maybe your new boyfriend has room for you." I closed the door and walked back to my workshop, leaving her standing on the porch with her expensive luggage and her shattered assumptions. Through the basement window, I watched her make a phone call. Probably to Brandon, maybe to Kayla. It didn't matter. The game had changed, and for the first time in years, I was the one making the rules. The next morning brought a parade of visitors to my front door. First Kayla, then Jules, then Renee's mother, all trying to play peacemaker or gather intelligence. I let them ring the doorbell and knock until their knuckles were sore. I was in my workshop when Frankie arrived, looking confused. "Dude, there's like 5 women on your front lawn having some kind of conference," he said. "What's going on?" I filled him in on the weekend's events. His expression shifted from confusion to admiration, to something approaching awe. "You locked her out? Damn, Evan, didn't know you had it in you." Neither did she. That was the problem. Through the basement window, we watched the impromptu support group on my lawn. Renee had arrived in an Uber, looking like she'd slept in her car. Her designer outfit was wrinkled, her perfect hair was a mess, and her makeup couldn't hide the bags under her eyes. "She looks rough," Frankie observed. "Good. Maybe now she knows how it feels to have your world turned upside down." My phone had been buzzing all morning with calls from unknown numbers, Renee's flying monkeys, trying to reach me on her behalf. I ignored them all except one, Linda, Renee's sister. "Evan, I just want you to know that what she did was wrong," Linda said. "I had no idea she was using me as an alibi." "I know you didn't. Thanks for backing me up. For what it's worth, I always liked you better than her previous boyfriends. You deserved better than this." I'm starting to realize that. Around noon, a new player entered the game. Brandon Cole himself, arriving in his silver Porsche like some kind of knight in shining armor. He parked behind Renee's support group and climbed out wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "This should be interesting," Frankie said. We watched Brandon approach the group of women. Even from our basement vantage point, we could see the tension in his body language. This wasn't going according to his plan either. Renee broke away from her friends and walked over to him. Their conversation was animated, lots of hand gestures and head shaking. At one point, Brandon pointed at my house like it was personally offending him. "You know what?" I said to Frankie. "I think it's time I introduced myself to Mr. Cole." I walked upstairs and out the front door. The entire group turned to stare at me like I was a zoo animal who'd escaped his cage. "Ladies," I said politely. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" Kayla stepped forward, clearly designated as the spokesperson. "Evan, we need to talk. This situation has gotten out of hand." "Has it?" "Because from where I'm standing, things are finally starting to make sense." Brandon removed his sunglasses and walked over with the kind of swagger that only comes from never being told no. "You must be Evan," he said, extending his hand. "Brandon Cole. I think we should have a conversation." I looked at his outstretched hand like it was a dead fish. "I don't think so. I don't shake hands with men who sleep with other people's wives." His fake smile faltered. "Look, this is a complicated situation." "It's really not. You wanted my wife, you can have her. But you can't have my house, my money, or my respect. And you definitely can't have my cooperation in pretending this is all civilized." Renee finally found her voice. "Evan, please, can we just talk about this like adults? Adults don't lie about visiting their sisters. Adults don't steal money from joint accounts to fund affairs. Adults don't humiliate their spouses in front of the entire town." "I never humiliated you." "Really? Because I'm pretty sure everyone here knows exactly what you've been doing. And thanks to social media, so does everyone else." I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook. The photos from Vegas had generated over 200 comments and reactions. More importantly, people had started putting the pieces together. "Look at all these concerned friends asking where you were while I was living it up in Sin City," I said, scrolling through the comments. Funny how nobody believed the Boston story once they really thought about it. Jules stepped forward, her HR training kicking in. Maybe we should all take a step back and think about this rationally. Rationally? I laughed. Jules, you've been covering for her affair for months. Don't pretend you're neutral here. Her face flushed red. You booked their dinner reservations. You provided alibis for their hotel meetings. You helped coordinate their schedules so they could sneak around behind my back. The group fell silent. Even Brandon looked uncomfortable. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Renee is going to pack her things and find somewhere else to live. Brandon is going to stop parking his overpriced compensation mobile in my driveway. And all of you are going to stop treating me like I'm the problem here. You can't just... Renee started. I can, and I will. This is my house. I've been paying the mortgage for 8 years while you spent our savings on designer clothes and secret vacations. I've been building a business while you've been building a lie. Brandon stepped closer, trying to use his height to intimidate me. Now listen here. No, you listen. I'm a craftsman. I work with my hands. I know how to use tools, and I know how to fix things when they break. What I don't know is how to fix people who are fundamentally broken inside. I turned to Renee. You have until Friday to get your stuff out of my house. After that, anything left behind goes to Goodwill. This is insane, Kayla said. You're acting like a child. A child? I'm acting like a man who's finally done being taken advantage of. There's a difference. I walked back toward my front door, then stopped and turned around. Oh, and Brandon, you might want to check your car. He spun around and ran to his Porsche. Frankie had been busy while we were talking. The word homewrecker was spray-painted across the hood in bright red letters, and there was a note tucked under the windshield wiper. Brandon's roar of rage could probably be heard 3 blocks away. You son of a bitch! Do you know how much this car cost? Less than my marriage was worth, I called back. But hey, at least now everyone will know exactly what kind of man you are. I went inside and locked the door behind me, leaving chaos on my front lawn. Through the window, I watched Brandon pace around his vandalized car while Renee tried to calm him down and her friends scattered like cockroaches when the lights come on. Frankie met me in the kitchen, grinning like a kid who'd just gotten away with the perfect prank. Think that was too much? He asked. Not nearly enough, I said, but it's a good start. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I showed it to Frankie. Looks like Mr. Cole wants to escalate things. What are you going to do? I smiled and opened my laptop. I'm going to show him what happens when you underestimate a man who's got nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The next few days were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Renee and her allies tried every tactic in the book: guilt, anger, threats, promises, even attempted seduction. I met each approach with the same calm detachment I used when selecting wood grain for a difficult project. Brandon, meanwhile, had his Porsche repaired and started driving by my house at odd hours like some kind of suburban stalker. Each time he passed, I made sure to be visible in my front window, usually holding a cup of coffee and wearing a satisfied smile. The town was eating it up. The Blue Buoy had become gossip central, with Barb holding court every morning as people dissected the latest developments. I started stopping by for coffee just to watch the show. Your wife's been making quite a spectacle of herself, Barb informed me on Wednesday morning. Showed up here last night with that Cole character, both of them drunk and loud. Had to cut them off before they started a fight. A fight with who? Each other. Seems like paradise ain't all it's cracked up to be. That afternoon, I got a call from Jules. Her voice was shaky, professional facade cracking. Evan, we need to talk. It's about Renee's job. What about it? There's been an investigation into expense account irregularities. Those restaurant bills, the hotel charges, they were all submitted as business expenses. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. You mean she was stealing from the company to fund her affair? I can't discuss the details, but she's been suspended pending a full audit. And you? The person who approved all those expenses? Silence. Jules, you might want to start looking for a new job. And maybe a lawyer. I hung up and immediately called Linda in Boston. Remember those photos I sent you? The ones of Renee in Vegas? I need you to post them on Facebook. Tag her in them. Mention how surprised you were to see her having such a good time while she was supposed to be visiting you. Evan, that seems kind of mean. Linda, your sister stole money from her company to cheat on me, then tried to make me look like the bad guy when I caught her. A few Facebook photos are the least of her problems. By Thursday evening, Renee's world was collapsing faster than a house built with rotten timber. She'd been fired from her job, her friends were distancing themselves to avoid the scandal, and Brandon was nowhere to be found. Apparently, dating unemployed women wasn't part of his brand. That's when she showed up at my door one last time. I found her sitting on my front steps at sunset, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Gone was the polished professional, the social butterfly, the woman who thought she deserved better than the life we'd built together. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. "Just to talk?" Against my better judgment, I let her into the kitchen, where we'd shared 8 years of morning coffee and evening conversations. "I'm sorry," she said, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she sounded like she meant it. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." "Why, Renee? That's all I want to understand. Why wasn't what we had enough?" She stared at her hands. "I don't know. I felt invisible, like I was disappearing into this suburban life. Brandon made me feel special, important. You were special. You were important to me. But you never said anything. You just worked in your basement and let me handle everything else. I felt like I was married to a ghost." I sat across from her at the table I'd built with my own hands. "So instead of talking to your husband, you decided to find someone who made you feel alive? It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. And the lies? The stolen money? The humiliation?" I panicked. Once it started, I didn't know how to stop it without losing everything. "So you decided to lose everything anyway, just differently." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Can we try again? Start over?" For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "No, Renee, we can't. You didn't just break our marriage, you broke me. You made me question everything I thought I knew about the person I'd been sharing my life with. So what happens now? Now you figure out how to live with the consequences of your choices, just like I had to figure out how to live with the consequences of yours." She nodded slowly and stood up. "I'll have my things out by tomorrow." "Good." At the door, she turned back one last time. "For what it's worth, I think I loved the wrong man." "No," I said. "You loved the right man wrong. There's a difference." After she left, I went down to my workshop and picked up the jewelry box I'd been making. The inlay work was intricate. Dozens of tiny pieces that had to fit together perfectly to create the final pattern. One piece out of place would ruin the entire design, kind of like a marriage. I spent the evening putting the finishing touches on the box, sanding and polishing until it gleamed. Tomorrow, I'd deliver it to the neighbor's daughter and start working on something new. My phone buzzed with a text from Frankie. "Saw the news about Renee's job. You okay?" "Better than okay," I typed back. "I'm free." Outside, I could hear Brandon's Porsche driving slowly past my house one more time. Let him drive. Let him circle like a shark in shallow water. He'd gotten exactly what he deserved, a cheating, lying, unemployed woman who'd already proven she couldn't be trusted. I turned off the lights in my workshop and headed upstairs to my empty house. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful instead of ominous. Tomorrow, I'd start building something new, something honest, something that would last. But tonight, I was going to sleep like a man who'd finally learned the difference between being underestimated and being undervalued, and I was never going to let anyone confuse the two again. Sucker Epilogue. New Foundations. 6 months later, I was putting the final coat of stain on a dining room set when Barb called from the Blue Boy. "Turn on Channel 8, she said. "You're going to want to see this." I wiped my hands and headed upstairs to find Brandon Cole on the evening news, being led away in handcuffs. The reporter was talking about embezzlement, fraud, and a Ponzi scheme that had collapsed when investors started asking too many questions. Apparently, Brandon's disruptive tech company had been disrupting people's retirement funds instead of whatever industry he claimed to be revolutionizing. The investigation had started when his business partner noticed irregularities in the books, irregularities that coincidentally began around the time Brandon started spending money on expensive hotels and restaurants to impress other men's wives. My phone rang immediately. It was Linda. "Are you watching the news?" "Just turned it on. Interesting development." Renee called me crying. Apparently she's been staying at his place since the divorce was finalized. Now she's homeless and unemployed, and her boyfriend's going to prison. "That's unfortunate," I said, meaning it. I'd gotten my revenge, but I took no joy in seeing anyone completely destroyed. She asked if she could stay with me for a while. I told her I'd think about it. "That's between you and her, Linda. I'm out of that business." "Good for you. By the way, how's the new girlfriend?" I smiled. "She's not my girlfriend yet. We're taking it slow." Sarah was a librarian I'd met when I donated some handmade bookshelves to the town library. She was quiet, thoughtful, and had the kind of integrity that couldn't be faked. We'd been having coffee every Tuesday for 2 months, and she'd never once asked me to be someone I wasn't. "Well, I like her already," Linda said. "She's got good taste in men." After we hung up, I went back to my workshop to finish the dining set. It was a commission from a young couple who'd just bought their first house, solid oak, built to last generations. The kind of furniture that would still be beautiful when their great-grandchildren were learning to walk. That's the thing about working with your hands. You learn the difference between what looks good and what actually is good. You develop an eye for quality, for craftsmanship, for things that are built on solid foundations. I'd spent 8 years married to someone who looked perfect on the surface, but was rotten underneath. Never again. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Coffee tomorrow? I have something to show you." "Wouldn't miss it," I typed back. Outside, the sun was setting over our quiet suburban street. No more Porsche driving past at all hours. No more drama on the front lawn. No more lies disguised as love. Just the sound of my tools working wood, the smell of honest craftsmanship, and the promise of tomorrow's coffee with a woman who understood the value of building something real. I'd learned a lot about myself over the past year. I'd learned that being underestimated wasn't always a weakness. Sometimes it was the perfect camouflage for a man planning his next move. I'd learned that revenge was a dish best served with precision, patience, and just enough public humiliation to make it memorable. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes you have to tear down everything you've built before you can start building something better. The dining set was finished. Tomorrow, I'd deliver it to the young couple and start working on my next project, a hope chest for Sarah's niece, who was getting married in the spring. But tonight, I was going to sit in my peaceful house, drink a beer, and enjoy the silence that comes from finally knowing who you are and what you're worth. Some people spend their whole lives looking for someone to complete them. I'd learned to complete myself, and that made all the difference.